I mean, the industry is shifting. And, depending upon what side of the creator versus like, distributor network you're on, you want you maybe view how fast that industry is shifting differently. Uh, and it's something that I think that the industry has to do a better job at understanding. People are more literate about how the trials and tribulations and pitfalls that you can run into trying to create something.
All right. Today we got Brittany and Eric from the For Colored Nerds podcast. Been a big fan. I've been following their work for a while and also their journey. And before we start, I do just want to say thank you to both of you because I feel like you've been so open about so much in the podcasting space. And I think a lot of people learned a lot from that. So thank you both. It was much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's been a wild ride in this industry, but it's been good. Can't complain.
Definitely. And I know for you that your journey has been well documented. You're back on the podcast that you had started years back with For Colored Nerds, and now you're with Stitcher. And I'd love to start there because I'm sure that you got hit up by a number of different outlets or networks that likely wanted to partner with y'all. What was it about Stitcher that made you want to work with them?
Wow, I feel like there was a lot. I mean, to your point, we did a bit of the tour, I guess you could say, in terms of meeting with tons of distributors after after our Quibi show kind of wound down, after Quibi wound down, rather.
I don't know if it's a winding down if it happens all in the same day.
Yeah, exactly. But no, with Stitcher, I think there were a few things that lined up pretty quickly. They were the only ones who kind of started the conversation knowing that we were coming in with a desire to own our show, which is funny because, as to your point before, like we have been very open about like some of the conflicts that we've had around pursuing ownership in particular. And so I think like uh, that changed the conversation in a way where we were then actually could talk more freely and comfortably about what we wanted the show to be, you know? Because again, there was
Yeah.
not that fear of like, you know, will it be ours, and will we maybe have to make something different, after the fact if we don't own and kind of control that. So I think that was like one big piece of it. I'm curious, Brittany, like what you would add. There's a bunch.
I mean, a big part of it too is like the team. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the people that we got to, talk with coming into Stitcher when we were just sort of in the initial feeling each other out stage, is someone who turned out to be the cousin of someone we had met a few years ago and like hit it off with, Natalie Muallim, who's amazing. She's at Stitcher and just made us feel comfortable from like moment one. Also Peter Clowney, who is Eric knows his proper title. I feel terrible because I can't remember anyone's proper title, because Eric works at Stitcher as an executive and I am but a lowly, what's the word I get paid at? A vendor. I'm a vendor. And so I'm not always privy to everything that happens within the company. But Peter Clowney, who is like I think the VP of content at Stitcher,
Yeah.
he was the very first editor that I ever had, like podcast editor, like the very first edit. Edit is like a term in podcasting where the team will sit and listen or be sent a version of an episode, and leave comments and share them with each other in order to make the episode better and get to that next draft. The first time I ever did that, it was with Peter Clowney, and that was 2015. So, to have this full circle moment where in 2021, he's the person who's really extending the offer for us to come and join Stitcher. That just felt really right. Also, when we first launched For Colored Nerds with Stitcher, we had an incredible executive producer, Camille Stanley,
Yes.
who is basically like a legend of public radio in St. Louis, and is just a hell of an executive producer. She kept like the first, I think we had her for what, maybe 3-4 months
Yeah.
when we were first really ramping up. she kept things
It was a
together
tight
and
ship.
she kept things moving. Yeah, and she was somebody who we had been interviewed by
Yeah.
before. I think the previous year with regard to rights and ownership and IP and everything like that. She is just a fantastic journalist and just was such an amazing guide. So it was just so amazing to have this experience where we had so many sharp people who we had either met before, had a relationship with before, or had like a meaningful link to. Um, Coming in, and it just kind of made things feel a lot more familiar. And also too, they were just fast.
Yeah.
They were just fast.
They
They were
followed
like,
up.
I they followed up. They were fast and they were I don't know. I mean, I think in so many areas of life, like somebody like the person who's just eager to follow up with you and eager to form that connection or cement that relationship, it's usually the person that you want to go with.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah, I hear the relationship side of it. I also hear the ownership side of it too. And especially with the way things are shifting now, sometimes it's still so shocking that it is still such a charged or controversial thing for whether it's podcasters, writers, or creators in any type of shape to want. I mean, you're coming in, you have a base, you have plenty of leverage. Like, how is this still one of these discussions where they want 100% of the thing and there's not even a discussion about shared or what that could look like? And I mean, it's not just you all. We see this at the highest levels, whether it's I think it was Michaela Cole when she was talking about
Yeah.
I May Destroy You, and she was going back and forth, whether it was with Netflix
Yeah.
or HBO on wanting a slice. Like, this is something that is clearly a challenge and a difficult thing for people at every scale of this game.
I mean, the industry is shifting. And, depending upon what side of the creator versus like, distributor network you're on, you want you maybe view how fast that industry is shifting differently. Uh, and it's something that I think that the industry has to do a better job at understanding. People are more literate about how the trials and tribulations and pitfalls that you can run into trying to create something and trying to create something that like is distributed to other people, whether it's podcasts, movies, music. You know what I'm saying? Like we all have the same internet and like we've all read the stories and the features. And so people know more of what to ask for. And the reasons I think why they might have the reasons they might have received before about why they, could not or maybe should not deserve like the rights to their own content uh are starting to finally feel frivolous. And so I think that thing is changing. I think it is still though a game of leverage, and it still depends on what you have in your corner, sadly, to be able to kind of push the issue with the distributor or with just whoever you're partnering with, to be able to get what you want. And yeah, there sadly is still a lot of road we got reached out to today about this very same issue, and that's
Yeah.
something that happens fairly frequently. So there's a lot of work that still has to happen.
And on that note, is it people reaching out to you asking you for advice to be like, hey, I know you all went through this. Any thoughts for me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. I mean, it's emails, text messages, phone calls, DMs. I had somebody reach out to me via text on behalf of one of their friends yesterday, um, wondering about the same thing. And I mean, we try to give as much advice as we can, but at the end of the day, the best advice that you can get in those situations definitely comes from like a legal
yeah,
professional.
absolutely.
Um, Typically,
We are
those
not
are the people
those.
that you want to defer to. We are not those. That's why sometimes on podcasts people are like, "What would you guys do?" And I'm like, "You know what? I am not in the business of giving legal advice, but my biggest piece of legal advice is to get a lawyer." But yeah, I mean, obviously I share a little bit more with people than that. But yeah, I think because we've been so open, sometimes people that we do not even know will reach out to us out of the blue just to be like, hey, this is something that I know that you went through. Do you have 5, 10, 15, 30 minutes to talk with me and kind of guide me through this process? Um, I mean, I will say the thing that I always say, which is that these contracts should not be so
Hmm.
difficult that a regular person could not pick up and read them. I think that there's obviously, how do I put it? I mean, a barrier to being able to have a fair contract is having the financial resources and also the institutional knowledge, relationships, to be able to get a lawyer. Like that's something that we did not have. I don't think I know when I first started working at Gimlet back in 2015. I didn't have the financial
Yeah. It
resources
wasn't
to
even an
hire a
option.
lawyer. I It wasn't an option. I wouldn't have known how to find an entertainment lawyer because before then, I was working as like I mean, marketing manager was the title, but didn't line up with what I was doing at my job. So, yeah, I wouldn't have had like the relationships, the understanding. I wouldn't have known how to find an entertainment lawyer, and I definitely did not have the money coming into working there to have that. So, I think that like, there is a certain level of like we're all being finessed a little
Yeah.
bit by the fact that people have to get not feel like they have to, but really truly have to have agents and lawyers and money up front to be able to spend on having somebody basically be their pit bull and get into the ring and fight for the contract that they deserve.
Yeah, it's interesting with podcasting specifically because I look at the music industry or even with writing to some extent. I have seen a few more of these hybrid models where it's okay, you can release your music on this platform. We offer a little bit more of a distribution push and a little bit more of a network per se than you would get if you just did it solely on your own, but you could still maintain the ownership. We just get, set cut of whatever it is. And we've seen this in music, whether it's record labels like Empire that started with a similar type of mindset, or some of the others. Even with writing, I'm
Mhm.
starting to see some creative things. But with podcasting specifically, and maybe part of it's just I haven't seen it myself with what I've seen, but I still haven't quite seen that network that is being ready to be like front and center, be like, hey, we are here if you want to do a exclusive deal but you maintain your ownership and we do a licensing deal, we can do that. Or if you want to have a set split, this is what our network is known for. I haven't quite seen that same thing in podcasting, and obviously I know part of the challenge is the value is the ownership that they have, because then they can go get
Mhm.
sold to whoever. But I think part of me is still waiting to see that, like, is that going to be a standard for one of the next, rising networks that we may see?
I mean, we are waiting to see that too.
Everybody's watching. Yeah. I mean, look, there are networks. I mean, for it's worth, even Stitcher. I don't say this, not trying to be like a corporate shill, but like, we engage a bunch of different types of deals. Yeah, I work as a creative executive there, and so what that means is like there are some things that we, own outright. There are some things that, or I say we, Stitcher. There are some things that Stitcher owns outright. There are some things that, they license, and just rep the ads. There are some things that, are hybrid. Th- w- I think what, one, even that for what it's worth is actually can be rare to have all those different types of like deals. Uh, but I think in general, what the industry kind of needs to understand is that people now like require that flexibility, because so many creators understand different parts of the trajectory. Everybody's not necessarily trying to be uh, at the pinnacle of, podcasts, or like on the front page of, iTunes every single day. There are different levels. Some people are having the podcast they want it as a significant companion to maybe something else that they're building. And so they understand what place that podcast could fit into their life and into their, brand or ecosystem. And the company that is willing to like be most flexible to that is going to get that person, like, because they're creating that comfort. They're creating that like space to say, like, I want to work with you. So much of, entertainment, what people haven't realized is behind the scenes, it's not necessarily, I want to work with you. They kind of want you to work for them, and to that degree, like, your contract reflects that. And I'm so excited by the shift that I see kind of happening in all entertainment related industries. We're seeing a lot more, hell, sports too. We just see a lot more creator or athlete led, like deals, but things where basically uh, the power the power and the leverage is becoming more equal slowly, but it's happening.
Yeah, that was
I
a.
think the thing that's tricky for me is oh sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
The deals that are fair and reasonable exist. And I'll say that we received a pretty good one from Stitcher. I mean, like from jump, when we received the contract, it was like uh, all fit on one page, double, triple space. It was mostly in plain English. I understood it when I read it. Um, and we felt good about it. And it felt like it was fitting. It felt like it was befitting of like how much Eric and I put into the show
Mhm.
and who really owns it. Um, and I'll say like it was really nice to get that deal now. But my hope is like, you know, people are like, when will we get there? What do you think there is?
Yeah.
There for me, quote unquote, there for me is when me and Eric back in 2014, when we first started the show,
Yes.
would have been handed a deal like the one we got last year in 2021. And so like or even back in 2017 when we first launched the Nod, me and Eric at that point would have been given new
Mm.
contracts.
Mm.
Because the Nod was very clearly a show that was really the DNA. It was based off of For Colored Nerds. Come on.
Yeah.
A show about black culture hosted by me and Eric. Nah, we based it off of something else. Are you kidding me? That's what it was. I think that to me is like when the equity has really gotten there. And it is going to take time. I wish that it didn't take time. It is going to take time. But even I'll say this though. There are people, usually like white, a lot of times male, um, and I was gonna say like usually they have a large following, but sometimes it's like I don't even know if that's what's going into the business decision that's being made when somebody offers like some white guy who has a podcast a bunch of money to be able to like make that thing forever, or gives that person a really good deal or some sort of like exclusive whatever. um there are people who have been getting fair deals all this time. I just would like to see sort of like the bar for that either be lowered or just like when I say lowered, I mean just like allowing more people in. Right now, the bar is basically like, are you white? Are you guy? Are you famous?
You have thoughts and friends?
Or like, yeah, do you want to share them on the microphone? I would like to see I would like to see that avenue broadened. And that's what I mean when when we're there, like success for me is just like not having to have relationships years in the game or be like a white guy with a podcast to be able to get access to the type of deal that we have now.
Yeah, and I think that framing makes complete sense, right? When you'd first started this and had the idea, you should have had this in place. And then further, when you're signing a deal with Gimlet or even, with a Quibi or whoever, there's enough, not just, layman's terms, but there's also just enough commonality that those things can happen. And I think that also makes me think a bit about the show itself and maybe just some of the slight differences between the Nod and For Colored Nerds. The Nod, at least in my impression, was always a bit more like, hey, here is the latest thing that is happening right now in Black culture, and here's our take on it. Let's discuss it. I think For Colored Nerds has that as well, but I think you also mix in some evergreen topics that have always coming in, which I think I always enjoy hearing. And I'm curious from your perspective, how has the process been about determining the topics and that balance? Because I'm sure there's the evergreen topics that you may want to hit. There's also the timely things that likely you may want to dive into. But then you also, have things that you're just personally interested in compared to what you may know the audience would really want to hear or what would drive engagement. So yeah, how is that balancing that piece of it been for you?
You don't know how timely that question is. Because we are always kind of managing our relationship with it. It is a balance and it's a conversation that is kind of always happening. I think to start where you did in terms of the comparison, I think how we thought about the Nod is more so we were trying to reflect what we saw. And I think the For Colored Nerds is more definitively how we think, if that makes any sense. And I don't know, Brittany, you might disagree, but that it's just what kind of came to me right now.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah,
works.
but, when we're thinking about that conversation, basically how we think and how to reflect that to our audience, we are looking at things that, like, could or either maybe a lot of things start evergreen and become more topical, if that makes any sense. Because also that's kind of how I think our conversations often work. We're just kind of talking about things that we've noticed or things that we've seen, and they start to kind of build momentum towards like something that could be like on the show. And like with it, for example, we consume dating reality shows at a unhealthy clip. We are committed to the genre, and we're always kind of talking about the like what we saw, how we feel about that, about any given show or episode, and it's starting to kind of come to well, wait, I have this idea that feels like it connects, kind of like what I think about all those things. And then Brittany will be like, "What?" Or I actually had this idea. I was thinking this, and so we start to build that for the episode. And then as we get closer to, having the conversation, we start to realize that like, okay, well, what are the things happening right now that relate to this larger conversation? How can we incorporate that? And that changes things as well. So we're always shuffling, Jesus, always shuffling our calendar, because that process changes. The evergreen thing might need more time to become a little topical. The topical thing might, feel too much like a flash in a pan, need to be more evergreen. So, I shout out to our producer, Alexis, for, really like just kind of rolling with how much of the changes we, sometimes need to make to the schedule. Um, but if we're in conversation with our audience, we want to make sure that we're reacting to that in as healthy a way as possible.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's tricky just because like on one hand, I don't know, podcasting is so interesting in that it is one of the few truly long form digital media. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
other than maybe like reading long form journalism, which I think we've learned over time, not everybody does. I think that's part of the reason why we've gotten to the place that we are in society right now. Podcasts are digital, and so on some level they can feel kind of ephemeral, but they live on the internet for so long in like a well indexed centralized place, and they're long. People will
yeah,
listen to 2 hours. I mean, people, I mean, me. I will listen to 2 hours sometimes of just BS, like nothing, like people just talking about old gossip. Like, I have no problem. That for me is something that I totally enjoy. And there's so many, the success of so many shows out there is really just people wanting to listen to someone talk, sometimes regardless of whether it's evergreen or of the moment. And so it's tricky because like we do find ourselves straddling that line a lot of the time. Sometimes I think we managed to like really kind of like get it really right and hit something at that
yeah.
moment where it just feels really fresh and like and and really like well thought out, even though it's coming out like right as the moment that like something is kind of cresting out there in the zeitgeist. But I mean, that still is kind of like at odds with how we think about engaging some of the topics that we do on our show. We try to be thoughtful, we try to be careful in making sure that we're expressing ourselves in a way that's clear, in a way that's not going to be harmful to others, in a way that's going to be
Yeah.
entertaining. And that does take time. So sometimes, sometimes we be chasing our tails a little bit, just trying to get stuff out the
Yeah.
door. But I don't know. It's like on like even we try to have even some of our most topical episodes still have that sustenance to them that will get somebody to want to, come back and listen to it for a second, third, fifth time, or even discover it 3, 4 months down the line. Even our most topical
Hmm.
of the moment episodes have that extra something to them that keeps people, feeling engaged long after the moment of that episode has passed.
For me, the episode that you all did that I think hits that exact point, Brittany, is the girl boss in the city episode. I feel like when I heard that, I had to. I wanted to listen because I was like, wait, is this what I think she means by the term? Okay, let me listen to it. And then when I heard it, I was like, okay, I see the trend. That makes sense. Okay, like, and then just hearing your take, and I know just some of the other examples. I'm like, yes, like that makes 100% sense. And I think what makes it resonate, not just is it the trend itself, but it also, I think, as a listener, makes me think about, okay, what are some other trends that are
Mm,
like that? Because I think
yeah,
so many of the things that we may think may be celebratory, especially in this past 6 years, where I think we've seen uh, great influx of more Black media and more Black representation, especially whether it's with your Netflix or with your streaming services. That said, there are still plenty of opportunities and holes and tropes and things to push back on. So I've been thinking about that piece ever since you all put that episode out.
thank you. Yeah,
I'm so glad
it
you liked it.
it was one of those things. Most of our episodes, also when we're making them, like I don't know if Brittany feels this way, but I often feel a bit kind of crazy because we'll have an idea. It's not like we don't really deal in hot takes. That's kind of why Brittany was like, we take our time. We try to make sure
Yeah.
we're fair. We do our research, and so sometimes when we come up on a thing where we're like, okay, now this is the take, and like we see this trend, we feel like we can define it, and then there's that moment actually right after, in between having recorded or talked through the episode that we're going to record and it coming out, where I feel crazy because now I'm like, I see it everywhere. And it doesn't, it's like, like almost like They Live, where you have the sunglasses on, you see like people as aliens. It's kind of like that. And so, with that episode, it's really exciting to kind of make those types of connections because, like, though that genre I have been consuming not as a genre. I have been just like catching pieces of it. And it wasn't until like being in conversation, with Brittany, that I'm realizing, wait, this is a genre. And, when you're thinking about that, that means something might change in terms of how you consume it. And so,
Mm.
like, the a lot of the surprise I had, or like I was, Brittany was explaining this thing of how she feels about her genre, but for what it's worth, as you hear me, I'm coming to it. You know what I'm saying? Like I am embracing it to kind of formulate my own ideas. And I think the audience appreciates being able to hear kind of both sides of that. Like the person who has like, who feels like they know I know my shit. I have figured it out. I see it. And then that person is like, well, wait, actually, oh shit, you're right. Like, like that tug of war, I think can be really, really fun. And it happens in so many different ways, like, back and forth, which is just, part of what's so fun about the show.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you responded to that episode because like sometimes we'll be putting stuff out and it's like, okay, I know this is interesting to me. But like, like I'm going out here on a limb talking about, all these white women on Sex in the City on this for colored nerds show. I'm like, how are people going to respond? Even we did an episode more recently about like me looking at like moms throughout pop culture and how like my favorite mom on TV right now is Pamela Adlon on Better Things, a white woman. And I'm like, I tweeted before the episode came out. I was like, look, Monday's episode is going to be about one of my favorite white women, but I need y'all to trust me. And it came out on March 1st. And someone tried to catch me. They were like, you going to do this during Black History Month? And I was like, it's going to be March 1st. Um, but yeah, I mean, sometimes it's a little stressful to think about, like we have so many conversations, me and Eric, and also us with Alexis Williams, our producer. Like we have so many conversations as a team, just like pinging things back and forth. We have a group chat where we send like articles, messy stuff from the internet, Twitter beef, and like kind of talk about those things. It said when we have episodes like that, it sometimes feels like we're like letting people into like, I don't know, it's like opening up your medicine cabinet or your like utility
Mm.
closet for somebody. It's like, I'm gonna show you something, might be a little weird, but we'll see how you respond. So it's really nice to hear from you. Like as somebody who is like really like both has their finger on the pulse of what's happening sort of like in media and entertainment, but also you don't strike me as much of a girl boss. So but it's nice to know that you felt the episode as well.
The other thing, you spoke to the moment a bit, and I think it's important to kind of come back to that. Like the kind of the moment that we're in, that's I think a part of also why we were so excited to return to the show. Like for us, I was talking about this with a friend yesterday. Like, I can't like I'm watching this. I'm watching the changes in media, people coming into the space, making stuff that, like, to be frank, I've always kind of dreamed of seeing or listening to. And the thing that I'm so happy about is that, I don't know how to shut off the part of my brain that's trying to understand where it's headed and figure out how I feel about it. And so, it's so awesome to kind of have that space where we can do that. And I think even one of the things we realized is that looking kind of back at, both the nod and for colored nerds, we were doing a version of kind of that same thing. We've often talked about it feeling a bit like a time capsule. And
Yeah.
so, I'm happy that you came to Girl Boss in this moment, because I'm also so curious about where it goes. And like, then we can, even selfishly, I can look back and kind of be like, listen to that, be like, oh, it's so interesting that that's where we were,
Yeah.
considering like wherever we end up. Because look at the news, hell, it's gonna like we have no idea. The world is crazy.
Oh yeah. I think that the time capsule piece is a great way to put it because yeah, as you put it, we are in this era where so much is changing right now with black media and who knows what
Hmm.
we may be talking about in 2025, right? Maybe
Yeah,
there's
Yeah.
a different type of trope, maybe things are better and there's, less, of a need to dig into tropes, but I think there's one thing that I do think about that will probably always be a bit of a time capsule itself, maybe not just for you all, but in general of like how we look at it. And maybe I guess I'd call it the perception of Tyler Perry and the content that he puts out and him as a business person. And
yes,
I think we could probably do, considering I know he's been a common theme on your shows, and going back and listening to some of those can
yeah,
probably reflect maybe where I don't want to say the culture because people have such a wide opinion of Tyler Perry even within the black community,
oh
but
yes,
Hmm.
um it's interesting because I think that you all could probably relate to maybe how I think about him and what he's built because on one
yeah,
hand it is so impressive to see this person that literally built what he was able to create and given the circumstances and as a black business leader it is inspiring to see that. On the other hand, as people like me that often live on Twitter too long, every few days there's some type of clip that's like, no, Tyler Perry Studios has to be shut down because it's some clip of someone wiling out and doing something ridiculous that would never be seen on any other type of broadcast. And you're like, what the fuck is this? But that's part of the amazingness of it.
yeah.
And uh, I mean, I could go on for days about it, but yeah, where are you both right now with your thoughts on Tyler Perry?
I'm glad you asked and ended that
It's
question with
yeah.
right
Your
now,
timing.
because over the course of the week, my
Hmm.
feelings swing like a pendulum about how I feel about Tyler Perry. Like on one hand, I mean, I'll say this, like I think the older I get and the more his legacy like continues on, um I really enjoy the camp of Tyler
Yeah.
Perry. Tyler Perry like almost has no, not almost. Tyler Perry has absolutely no shame. Tyler Perry is one of the most shameless performers I've ever seen in my entire life. He leaves it all on the floor. He holds
Yeah.
literally nothing back, like at all. I don't even think he has an unexplored idea in his mind. I think he literally has an idea. I think he takes action on each of them. And I think that we've seen them
Immediately.
meet as soon as possible. So like, I don't know, there's something about like him just not giving a shit that I really connect to, and him just like leaning in and doing whatever he can to entertain people, maybe second, himself first, I think. I love that. Like I think that that is amazing. When Tyler Perry also shows up in somebody else's movie and is
Yeah.
acting, like I had never seen Gone Girl until like 2 years ago, and I watched it and I found myself saying this is just like a white Tyler Perry movie. And then
Yeah.
he was in the movie playing a regular person. Like he's in Star Wars, I think it's a Star Wars movie playing
Yeah.
a regular person. Like I think that is so
Well,
funny
he's a
and I
Jedi,
kind of
I think.
yeah, he's Jedi. Like I think it's funny that he like on some level, like I think he kind of knows he's ridiculous, and I like that. I also like we said a bunch of things about like how his content is like, um it's a very accessible, in every sense of the word, and also like that he like does make family entertainment, which like when you think about like when we get together, black folks get together to watch movies or play games or have, Christmas dinner or whatever we're going to turn on after that, you kind of do want that multi-generational entertainment that's got a little something for everybody, maybe slightly
Yeah.
risque with a Christian message all the time. Like, it serves a purpose. And he's put so many um black actors and not writers, but what I would say, something that I found out is that like crew people, like
Mhm.
basically like if you're on Tyler Perry crew, if you're an editor or you're a gaffer or whatever, from what I understand, you're making good money. Like he'll pay you in Atlanta what you would get paid in New York or LA. So it's weird. It's like I have such complex feelings about him because obviously like he um doesn't employ writers at all, which is pretty clear.
Mm-mm.
Even if you didn't know that for a fact, I think it's pretty evident from the work. He doesn't employ writers at all. Um I mean, there's so much to be said about his content and what some people might think of as like it being harmful or holding black people back or engaging in stereotypes, especially stereotypes about black women.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that stuff is true. But I do find Tyler Perry interesting as somebody who like has built an honest business. What I mean when I say honest business is like he knows exactly what people want from him and he
Mhm.
gives it to people consistently. He knew somehow that like if people would watch me playing Medea, a completely made up character, if people would watch grainy bootleg DVDs of me playing Medea in gospel stage plays with their families, they absolutely would buy a $15-$20 movie ticket. They
Yeah.
absolutely would go to see me in person, like on tour. And they absolutely would tune in if I was on Oprah. And that was a pretty smart way to build a brand if you look back at it. That's what I mean when I say that Tyler Perry has an honest business. He provides exactly what he has always promised. And there is something compelling about that. That's where I
Yeah.
am today.
I I don't think I can fully like it's almost like I can't quit him completely,
Mm,
if that makes any sense.
mm,
Like, he to Brittany's point, there's so much accomplished so much, and it's so fascinating how he uses those accomplishments to facilitate like whether it's growth, his own growth, the growth of his company, or like the
mm.
growth in the medium, whatever. And it's just so hard to pin down his reasons, you know what I'm saying, in terms for any one thing. But you can't help but be fascinated by it. Like yeah, it's one of those people like I respect what he's accomplished so much. And they're even don't get twisted. Like another big piece of this is like I try to have very complex thoughts about what I want the world to be. And I try to educate myself. I try to really, what I'm saying, like do the work of understanding who I want to be in the world. But I also try not to be above it all, if that makes any sense. And I think like with Tyler Perry, sometimes people can like turn their nose up at like the folks who enjoy his content because
Mhm.
of all the things that come along with it. But also like we can't lose the fact that like people are being moved by this in some way. And I try not to be above that. I try to meet them where they're at. Would I challenge him to maybe make a few changes? Absolutely, if I had the opportunity. Do I think that like, maybe even those people who are in his audience deserve a tiny bit better? Absolutely. But guess what? They're happy. And like that if I like, it gives me the thing that I can connect with that, cousin who I only see at the family reunion or what I'm saying? Like on well hell, more recently the family Zoom call or whatever we're doing, nowadays. Like it gives me that thing that I know I can connect with them about. And I send my thoughts about everything else related to the movie to the group text. So yeah, you gotta respect it, even though you also maybe have to critique it.
100%. I mean, I look at how he's gone about just being unapologetic. I think back to that clip that he had with Kenya Barris, where Kenya Barris has said something to the effect of, I'm always making
Lord.
shows and I'm trying to seek white people's approval or Rotten Tomatoes or whatever. And Tyler Perry's like, I don't give a fuck about Rotten Tomatoes or any of this stuff. Like, I'm making it for the people
Clearly.
I'm making it for, right? And then you see Tyler Perry like 2 years later getting honored by the Oscars, institution that he's clearly said, I do not care what
Doesn't
they
give a
have to
shit.
say. Like, this is
Yeah.
how he's built himself, and there is something amazing with that, right? And Eric, I do like the point that you brought up regarding how it can be easy for people, especially within, black folks, to turn their nose up or look down on the people that clearly enjoy this content. And in
Mhm,
some ways it also makes me think of no different than how in, the most recent election in the primaries,
Mm.
people were turning their nose up at some of the black voters in the South and who they supported as the,
Yeah.
Democratic candidate. And it's like, no, like, you can't just, play this elitistness of how people look at their content. And I think there is, to your point as well, Brittany, a beauty in who else can relate. I mean, I've talked to my mom about Tyler Perry, and she's a Jamaican woman in her 60s, and she'll watch Meet the Browns and sees no problem with it. And I think it's great that she does that, right? And I think just being able to have that kind of commonplace is like, okay, yes, I'm glad this exists. I'm still gonna laugh when somebody takes a clip of it and posts it on Twitter and be like, "What the hell is this?" But no, it's. I'm glad it's out there.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, to this day, sometimes me and my fiance just turn on the dinner scene, like the dinner reveal scene from Why Did I Get Married? I mean, you could just turn that on any time of day and
It's
you'll be
good.
laughing for 15 minutes straight. I'm sorry, that was a good movie. When I first started dating my fiance, I think maybe about 5 weeks into us dating, 5 weeks in, I got the flu. And he took care of me, which is like a thing that definitely set him apart. But the thing that he did is like the first thing that he did was turn on Why Did I Get Married? He was like, "Oh, you're sick in bed. Let me turn on this Tyler Perry movie. It's gonna put you in a better place." And he was absolutely right. There's something about that stuff that's just it's comforting.
It works.
It
It
definitely
just
does.
works.
It definitely does. All right. Well, before we let you go, I want to talk a bit about hip hop. Of
Mm.
course, this is an area that I do cover with the podcast, and it's been this interesting thing for me because I both have my personal interest of someone that, like anyone, the music I grew up listening to in high school and college definitely
Mhm.
will always have a special place for me. But I'm covering now and looking at a lot of people whose music I may not necessarily seek out, but I still, am following to make sure that I can, not just be as subjective as I can, but obviously, it's hard not to do that. But I guess as people that are also in the media space and, also, I guess including both hip hop and R&B together, it'd be good to hear, what's your relationship like with current music made by current artists compared to the music that also may have been popular when you were in high school or college?
Hmm.
What is that relationship like for you?
It's funny. We've been talking about this a little bit, just as a
Mhm.
group, as a show team. This exact point, at least for me, it's a really kind of interesting moment because, like, I was somebody, back in the oh man, this is gonna make me sound real old, but like in the like blog era hip hop time, I was like I caught every not right post. You know what
Yep.
I'm saying? Like I was literally because I had Google Readers, I would make sure to click every
Mm.
one, listen to like first 30 seconds of the mixtape or whatever to see if I liked it and then, kind of come back to listen more later. I ain't got time for all that now, like it's just there's just too much going on. Um, and so, I found myself at the place where I have learned that like a lot of people get like once they kind of hit their mid 30s, they actually start apparently retreating to the things that made them most comfortable. So I feel myself doing that, but it also, to your point, like I feel conflicted about it because I'm like, oh shit, I don't want to. I'm not trying to tap out. I'm not trying to like push myself back from the table. You know what I'm saying? I'm still here. And so, I do try to catch a lot or not a lot. I try to catch some of the kind of newer artists who are kind of coming out and watch again for the trends of what I see. And so, I still try to listen a little bit on like on like Fridays when stuff comes out. Like I'm trying to like hear a little bit, but not all the time. Like there have been folks who have kind of risen above, and often it's the folks kind of connected to the people to the artists who I kind of evangelized from a little bit before. So like Baby Keem, for example, I've been like a huge fan of like, some of his like tracks that come out on the album. He obviously, is Kendrick's cousin, but just like those kind of folks who are kind of in the orbit of others that I know I can feel most confident about in terms of whether the sound is going to be kind of what I'm looking for. Because also hip hop is really changing, and like, it's changing around me in a way that I don't always connect with. But I respect that power and the fact that, like, it's a living, breathing thing. It's going to become something else. And so, I'm trying to understand a little bit of the trajectory of kind of where they're going to be able to just understand how my relationship to it is changing. So yeah, it's a complicated time. I'm not like I think I told Brittany this. I, in this moment, listen to more R&B than I have ever in my life.
It never fails.
Like,
And are we
and
talking about modern like R&B artists or like R&B
all of
from
it.
back in the day?
All of it.
Okay.
I'm talking about, like everything from the hell, that re-release of Hotels to Jasmine Sullivan to
Mhm.
going back, and I have a literally I call it like old people cookout music. That playlist has been putting in work for me, So it really runs the range, and some of that comes from just like the volatility of the world right now, you know. But I don't want to say that like I don't know. I think hip hop reflects more than what we can consume. And so what I have been seeing recently has sometimes stressed me out, you know. And so I've found myself leaning on other genres, but I do still have hope that they're gonna swing back. And there's probably gonna be somebody else. Hell, everybody's talking about Kendrick coming back this year. So maybe, he can inspire some folks. We'll see.
We'll see. We'll see if he comes
Sorry,
back.
I rambled.
As far as music, so I really like music that I can sing along to. And kind of what Eric was saying, like I like listening to things that like, especially like I like listening to at this point in my life, rap and hip hop that makes me feel aspirational. And I feel like female rappers right now are the only people who are rapping about things that actually you'd want to do. They're like,
This
oh,
feels right.
I want, they're basically like, I want to have sex with a really hot guy. I want to make a lot of money. I want to buy expensive things, and I want to go on a trip. And I'm like, wow, yeah. I mean, I identify with that. And so like they say it in a really poetic way and they put it over a great beat. And I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. This I understand. They're always just like, I'm so fly, I'm so cute, I'm so beautiful, I'm a bad bitch. That to me, it never goes out of style. I think that sometimes when I hear some of these young men, everything is like Zanny, Zanny, Zanny. And my thought
It's so
is
much
like,
drugs.
yeah, I know. My thought is now I know I'm really getting older because I'm just like, oh my God, y'all are stressing me out. Like, are you drinking water? Are you taking breaks? Do you have a trip buddy? Like, you should not be taking all these Zanny bars by yourself and being in a club and not telling anybody this is not safe. But also like some like I want to listen to things that are going to like make me feel good or ease my stress. And I think to Eric's point right now, I don't feel like listening to a lot of the younger male artists at this point eases my stress. That's not to say that I don't think that there's quite a few people that I hear that I'm like, oh man, this sounds really good or this sounds interesting. But I also don't follow music as much as I used to when I was younger. I was kind of into like some of like the blog hip hop. I used to follow Blind Eye for the Kids and I was always downloading all the stuff and listening to it. And it was fun, but like I didn't have like the type of bills I have now. I had more energy.
Mhm.
I'm tired now. And so I think even sometimes deciding to try something new feels like it can take energy out of me when I'm like, I could just go straight to something
Yeah.
that I know that I'm really going to enjoy. So because I love music that I can sing along to, I have always been a pretty strong R&B listener. My parents are really into R&B. I've actually found myself enjoying present R&B and real good singers like a Jasmine Sullivan, a Ari
Mm,
Lennox, a JoJo,
mm.
like people who really can sing. I do like to listen to their music. I love pop, but speaking specifically to slightly closer to hip hop, I've been listening to a lot of older R&B. stuff that like I will hear on like a 70s mix or something like that, and it'll like take me back to being in the car with my parents on a Saturday night coming home from one of their friends' parties, hearing like a Quiet Storm set on the radio. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't heard this song in
Mm.
25 years. Like I've been listening to a lot of that stuff. And I don't know, it just puts me in a good state. And I feel like some of it really just speaks to my emotions, maybe that I'm experiencing as an like as I'm getting deeper into adulthood, as I'm like a real adult now at 34, when I wasn't really at 27 or 24 or 22. um I think that there's like a uh I don't know, like something about the where the melody hits the lyrical complexity. It's just, I don't
Mm.
know, I understand basically now why my parents were like 35, 40 and listening to Angela Bofill late at night, driving us back and forth places. So I mean, but what I will say is that my opinion on what music is popping right now, I don't care that much about my opinion. I Even if I don't
Mm.
listen to everything, I really want to know what like young people are responding to, because I think what they think
Mm.
of their music is a lot more important than what I think of their music. Like it's fine to me that like I
Yeah.
don't connect with it, because I'm not meant to connect with it. Like my time of wearing, as the kids say, like the Olivia Pope business casual in the club, I had a satin vest from Forever 21. I wore it to a party at Rutgers in 2007. Those days are behind me, thankfully. But yeah, I think that I don't know. That's why part of the reason why I like TikTok. And the TikTok like playlists, or even just like seeing what's
Keeps
hot
you
on the
up.
charts. Yeah, it keeps me up with like artists that young people are like super into. And also even sometimes on TikTok there'll be people who are way younger than me, like 10, 15 years younger, who like make sort of like top 5 artists I'm listening to right now.
Mhm.
And I get to hear snippets of their music. Like I'm just interested in what they think about their music. Because like honestly, what they think about their music and how it speaks to them, that says a lot more to me about their like where culture is headed and what they're into, than like me listening to something
Yeah.
and being like, what the hell is this? I'm auntie now and it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We-
that's the exact point there. I think that I like in my few group chats, people will do this thing every year. Someone will post the annual XXL freshman class, and then they're like, "Hey, do y'all even know any of these names in here?" And I'm like, "Bro, you're 39 with two kids. Like, they're
You're
not
not
meant for
supposed
you. Like,
yeah.
this literally isn't meant for you." And so I think about that piece, right? And maybe even more so now. It's like I think that some of these artists, the same way that media in general is just becoming more niche, they know their audience. So they're leaning
Yeah.
into it even more so than maybe some of the forced mass marketing that they would have been pushed to do, 20, 30 years ago before. So it's
Folks are
been,
smarter. Like
Yeah.
to your point, they're smarter. They don't, you know what I'm saying? You don't need to, and also how I think how people think about what a hugely successful career in music is different slightly now.
Hmm.
Like there is not actually the same scale as there used to be, or if that scale exists, it's only for a much smaller amount of folks. So like I think people are coming into the game now. The game, sound like I'm trying to be cool, but like people are coming into hip hop now, trying to, like trying to sustain themselves and have a long career as opposed to always being, trying to necessarily be like the person at like the top of the charts. And I think that actually is really great. I think because again, the sustaining is the part that is really interesting because we've seen so many of our, favorite rappers or musicians, period, just kind of like burn themselves out or get
Hmm.
burned by the industry and then they, disappear after a few albums. So yeah, like well, whatever. I was gonna be like, I'm still shocked Future is producing, music. He's had a long career,
He
but
has so
like
many
I think
kids, he
there
has to
are a
do
lot of
something.
very
He's
true,
got to do
very
something.
true. But yeah, I'm curious who are there's so many others. I'm like, I want them to be able to have the longevity in this space, especially a lot of the, the kind of female rappers out here now. I am excited to see them so in control of the business as well because of how, like, they're smart about what that's going to protect for them later on. Meg is like getting her shit together. She's like,
Yeah.
y'all not about to run me out the paint.
right.
Like, I
Hmm.
know what the contract, the paper's supposed to say.
And she has her Popeyes franchises set up too. She's on
Yep.
it.
Hey,
Yep.
the sauce was good.
Sauce was
I had
good.
it.
It
It's
wasn't too
great.
spicy. It wasn't too sweet.
Yeah.
Oh man, I think we could talk about hip hop and dating back all day, but I know we're run out of time. But before we let you go, I feel like that last point you made was probably a good note to just tie things up. Right? People are getting smarter about knowing their audiences leading
Hmm.
into it, and I think that speaks a lot to what you both have been able to build over the years with For Color Nerds, with the nod, and then back with For Color Nerds again. I think that having an audience that has been with you this long just speaks to the work that you've done and all of that goes into it. So thank you again for coming on. And I mean, both as a listener and as a fellow podcaster, it's been great to watch both of your journeys. So thanks again. This is great.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much. That was really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Seriously, you do great work.
You
It's
do
such a
great work.
pleasure
I
and
remember
honor
I
to be
first started
here.
reading you. What is that? You made this what is it? What's the word? Infographic like flow chart about Issa Rae's businesses and
Like a
how
diagram.
like how each
Mm,
one feeds the other, like talking about why she still has the Patreon, how she's thinking about radio. And this was probably like 3 or 4 years ago or something like that. It was like
yeah, it's
instant
a while back.
follow, instant subscribe. So it's cool to like be here with you now.
No, thank you. That means a lot. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it.